All right, let's jump right in. The biblical conquest of Canaan. We're talking about one of the most epic, legendary narratives in human history, right? An invading army, massive, heavily fortified cities, trumpets blasting, and a rapid, sweeping military campaign that literally birthed an entire nation. But what happens when we try to match this monumental story with the actual dirt, the rocks, and the ruins left behind? Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're putting on our historical detective hats and digging beneath the soil of the Holy Land to see what the physical evidence actually has to say. It really brings up a massive, kind of uncomfortable question. What if one of the Bible's greatest military victories never happened the way it was described? This dilemma right here has sparked one of the greatest historical debates of our time. It's that classic tension between a sacred ancient text and the hard, cold discoveries of modern archaeology. And getting a grip on this tension, it's absolutely crucial for understanding how we even begin to piece together ancient history. And that leads us to a super specific, endlessly fascinating question. What if the walls of Jericho never came crashing down? I mean, we all know the story. It's dramatic, it's cinematic, it's iconic. But when archaeologists actually went looking for those massive collapsed walls, well, what they found completely shook up the traditional understanding. So what if the conquest that supposedly transformed an entire land left behind a totally different archaeological story? That is exactly what we're going to unpack today. We're going to follow the clues, city by city, layer by literal layer, to see what the dirt actually tells us about the fall of Canaan. First up, let's establish our baseline, a biblical conquest narrative, the initial report. According to the book of Joshua, the Israelites entered Canaan and launched this massive, highly organized military campaign. And Jericho is the most famous battle of the bunch. The strategy laid out in the text is incredibly specific. You've got the Israelites marching around the city for 6 days. Then boom, the explosive seventh-day climax. They march 7 times, the priests blow their trumpets, the people shout, and the mighty walls of Jericho utterly collapse. For centuries, people accepted this as a precise blow-by-blow historical record. Until, well, science went looking for proof. Which brings us to our next phase. Unearthing Jericho's collapsed walls. The investigation begins. And wow, is there a plot twist waiting for us in the archaeological record? Back in the 1930s, British archaeologist John Garstang is digging away. He finds these layers of violent destruction, and he concludes, yep, I've confirmed Joshua's conquest. Case closed, right? Well, actually scratch that. Skip ahead to the 1950s. Kathleen Kenyon comes in, re-examines the site using much more advanced modern excavation techniques, and her conclusions completely overturn Garstang's. She dated that same destruction to centuries before the traditional date of Joshua. So the crucial takeaway here is honestly kind of startling. During the exact period of the supposed conquest, Jericho was just sparsely occupied. It completely lacked those large fortified walls. Think about that for a second. If Kenyon's advanced dating is correct, and honestly her findings still heavily drive the debate today, then there were simply no massive walls for Joshua's army to bring down. It's a huge realization that just totally flips the narrative on its head. But Jericho isn't the only headache for historians. Let's look at the mystery of Ai, conquering an abandoned city. According to the biblical text, Ai was the very next target, conquered right after Jericho using a really clever ambush strategy. But the archaeological excavations present a glaring anomaly. Researchers definitely found an ancient settlement there, sure, but it had been abandoned long before the traditional period of Joshua's conquest. We're talking about a city that was completely uninhabited when the battle supposedly took place. And there's this incredible, kind of ironic linguistic clue buried in here too. The name Ai itself, it's frequently translated from Hebrew as literally meaning ruin or heap of ruins, which naturally poses a pretty massive, almost funny historical question. How exactly does an invading army conquer a city that is already a heap of ruins? As you can imagine, scholars have wrestled with this one for a long time. Some suggest the biblical location of Ai might have just been misidentified by modern explorers, like maybe we're just digging in the wrong spot. Others argue that the story might actually preserve a cultural memory of an event that happened at a totally different site. We're looking at this neutrally because, honestly, to this day, no clear consensus has emerged. It remains a genuine, wide-open historical puzzle. So, if individual cities are posing a problem, what happens if we zoom out? Let's check out Dating the Destruction Layers, a complicated crime scene. Both supporters and critics of the conquest narrative look to these widespread late Bronze Age destruction layers found all throughout Canaan for answers. Archaeologists have definitely found numerous destroyed cities. But what caused the destruction? Was it warfare, internal conflict, economic collapse, maybe a massive earthquake or natural disaster, or even foreign invasions completely unrelated to Israel? It's like trying to solve a 3,000-year-old cold case. Connecting all these various messy destruction layers to one single coordinated campaign is incredibly difficult. Because ultimately, when you lay it all out, the evidence appears scattered across completely different time periods. It utterly fails to form that clean, clear pattern of a single, rapid, coordinated military campaign that we read about in the book of Joshua. The physical clues are just way too spread out over time to neatly fit the traditional story. And this lack of a clear pattern forced researchers back to the drawing board, leading to the gradual emergence theory, a new paradigm. Because the physical record didn't match a sudden massive outside invasion, a new model had to be proposed to explain how Israel actually emerged in Canaan. And this is a massive paradigm shift. The traditional rapid military invasion model assumes a sudden outside attack, but as we've seen, it's supported only by disputed, scattered evidence. The prevailing alternative today? Gradual internal emergence. The idea here isn't a sudden attack at all, but a slow cultural evolution from within Canaanite society. And this is backed by some pretty clear evidence of new, small Iron Age settlements popping up in the Central Hill Country. So what does that gradual emergence actually look like when you're digging in the dirt? Well, you see populations slowly developing distinct identities over generations. You see signs of internal migration, cultural evolution, and these small highland settlements that just show natural population growth over time. Sure, there were probably occasional local conflicts here and there, that's just human history, but there is absolutely no footprint of a massive invading army sweeping across the entire region. To most modern archaeologists, this looks like gradual social change, not a lightning-fast military conquest. So, where does all of this leave us? Ultimately, archaeology hasn't confirmed the dramatic conquest narrative in its traditional form. The evidence we have tells a much more complicated, nuanced story. However, it is so important to remember that a lack of physical confirmation doesn't just erase the history. Ancient stories are incredibly powerful. They very often preserve genuine cultural memories of real people, real places, and real conflicts, even if the exact scale and the timeline kind of shift in the telling over the centuries. Which leaves us with one final, pretty profound thought to chew on. If the physical evidence remains silent, how does a lack of archaeological confirmation alter our understanding of these world-shaping ancient narratives? It's a puzzle that continues to challenge archaeologists, historians, and believers alike. And honestly, maybe that's exactly what makes studying this stuff so fascinating. The deeper we dig, the more intriguing the questions become. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.